right, I believe we are live, so I will call to order the meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency. This is a regular session, and its meetings are available for viewing through Charter Communication Channel 180, and also, I believe, on the Grande Live TV website. With that, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Steve Clemens.
Here.
Gary Lillard.
Here.
Corinne Dudo.
Here.
Nicole Howard.
Here.
Marianne Meisner is absent excused at the moment. Justin Rock.
Here.
All right, roll call is complete.
All right, very good. Per ORS 192.6701, agency members are participating in this regular session by electronic communication, obviously. We have no items on the consent agenda. Robert, are there any public comments?
Not related to the agency, thank you.
All right. We have no public hearings, no unfinished business. One item of new business, and that is to consider revision to the scope of work for the Texaco Station project, which was funded, I believe, 2019 call for projects, and
2018.
2018. All right. So with that, who is taking this one? It looks like a tag team between Robert and Christine. So it's all yours. Oh, can't hear you, Christine.
Christine, we can't hear you.
Nope. Nope. It looked like it just flashed from mute to something. Nope.
I don't know what to do.
Oh, now there you are.
Now we hear you.
Are you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I think I have a short in the cord. Anyway, as the mayor was saying, we do have before us tonight a request for a change in the scope of work for the Vintage Texaco project. That building is located at 1508 Adams Avenue. And as you may recall, in 2018, the project was awarded a $50,000 grant. There was the total project cost was approximately $700,000. And the applicant had requested $125,000, and then the grant was for $50,000. That initial scope of work entailed retrofitting the 3 bays in the existing structure, and then enclosing the pump area, coffee shop, and then adjacent to that, hotel. So the project.
Excuse me, Christine. Okay, never mind. Kyle has canceled out, so that's good.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Kyle. The project has moved forward since that time. As you may recall, there were some environmental issues that had to be mitigated. That work has been done, and the DEQ has provided the appropriate documentation. Having that documentation in hand has allowed the Chachases to go ahead and proceed with financing and completing the purchase of the property, which is where they're at right now. And they're ready to start moving forward with the project. However, our economy has changed, and lenders are more conservative in their lending right now than they were a few years ago. The other thing that's changed is that EOU had been slated to move into the bay portion of the project, but they are unable to financially commit to that at this time. So Gus and Karen have found a new tenant for the project. They have a signed lease in hand for the Grande Faith Center Church, and they will be occupying the 3 bays. The retrofit project part of the project will move forward very similar to the manner that it was planned before. It will still be a multi-purpose structure that can be used for gatherings, lectures. EOU can still use it when available, and events as well. And then in addition to that, they're still planning on the coffee shop on the other side of it, which would be a cafe with coffee, espresso, ice cream, and light food. However, they would like to move forward without the hotel component. And so this changes the overall project cost to around $440,000. They would like to keep the initial $50,000 grant and, as I said, move forward with the revised scope of work. I also do need to mention where the hotel was going to be, there would be a drive-through that would be put in place for the cafe. So that's the revised scope of work as proposed, and I can answer some questions. We also have Gus Chachis on the video with us, and he's available for questions as well. So Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Questions for Christine or Gus?
So it still fits within the scope of the original proposal. Not, but it's different, but it's also very similar.
It's very
Yeah.
similar. The
Very
large
poorly-
is that the hotel component would be left off,
Okay.
and then the drive-through would be an addition that wasn't there before.
And I think the hotel really isn't part of the scope of this kind of a grant anyway. We've kind of changed it a little bit.
We have changed it in the past couple of years, but I think new construction would be something that you would consider if you had a project come forward.
Right. But there's ice cream involved, so
Is ice cream now involved?
Yes.
right. So it's got a plus there.
Yeah.
Right.
Nicole, you were waving a hand.
I did. If I can have a second.
Sure.
I have no problem with what's being proposed, but I have real worries about approving a change this big and the kind of precedent that sets. We approve projects. I mean, everybody was excited about what this hotel was. We had the schematics with the glass. Everyone was excited about the EOU partnership. And I think if we imagine other projects that we approve making such fundamental changes as to, have a different partner and not build a hotel, I don't think it's trivial. And I would love this project to come through the channels of the call for projects and be held up against our rubric that looks at blight and how many jobs are added, which was a big piece of the hotel. I just don't feel like these are minor revisions to the project. And I hate to say it because Gus has been as patient as Job through this whole thing with the DEQ business. But we are opening ourselves up to a precedent that we could really regret down the road when someone who's going to put in a great restaurant with retail and apartments above decides what they want is a medical dispensary. And I think that we approve these things based on the plan that's given to us. And if it's like, hey, we're going to do, a tap house instead of a full bar, that seems kind of minor, but this is not minor. And I just think that the agency should be really thoughtful and kind of just checking this off and moving on down. As much as I like what Gus has done at the landing, and I know this Texaco station is going to be great, this isn't fair to a lot of other people if we treat this like it's a little bit of an adjustment to a plan. It's a really different project.
So can I say a couple things?
Sure.
So one thing, Nicole, it absolutely is a big change. And so that's why it is coming back before the agency to consider instead of something that Robert could administratively approve, because it is a significant change to the scope of work. But I think one of the really important things to keep in mind here is that his original application requested $125,000 for the overall project that did include the hotel. And if you recall, that was the call for projects year where money was awarded that was less than the applicants needed to complete their projects. And this was one of those projects that only got awarded a $50,000 grant on a project that was nearly 700,000. So that in any round of projects at a total project cost of 700,000, that would have been a significant project. We rarely have projects that come that close. The last one that we had that was even in that same range was the Grande Animal Hospital. So looking at it in terms of, you know, an overall project cost of $440,000 is more in line with where most of our projects come in, and they would still only get that $50,000 grant as opposed to what we have changed now to a $75,000 grant on qualifying projects.
Robert, do you have?
Yeah, just to put it in perspective, I agree that this is a major change in the scope of work. And so I think that if I were to be taking a look at it as a brand new project coming in 2018, it still would have had a total project cost of about $60,000 more than the next higher project. The 2018 cycle had two projects over 300,000. This one coming in at 440. If we look at the call for projects that we just completed, if this project had come in this year, it would be $100,000 more than the highest project cost of the four that we had. The projects that were funded by the agency this year were valued at $345,000, $211,000. Both of those received their max eligible amount, or $75,000 and $69,000 respectively. And then the other two projects were both under $50,000. So if this were to be a project that was coming in cold for this project cycle, given the location and the type of use, it would have scored very highly and likely would have received $75,000 in funding as opposed to the reduced scope $50,000. So that just to kind of put it in perspective. But Nicole, I agree with your sentiment that these should not be automatic and they should be carefully considered because of the potential for a precedent that would come into play. And I think that it's defensible when you look at the amount of the award, the total project scope, and the location, and whether or not it would be competitive in pretty much any funding cycle. And for those reasons, I think that it has merit to do this. Down the road, the bigger question is if Gus were to come back and say he wanted to add the hotel component, whether or not that would be considered as something that the agency essentially had already funded, or whether that would be treated as a completely new project. But that's not the piece that we're considering right now. It's really does the project merit a reduced scope award of $50,000?
Did you, Christine, did you happen to score it based on our metrics that we're using now?
No, I didn't rescore the project, but if you do look at those metrics, as Robert said, it would score very highly on the private to public investment portion. It would, one thing that has changed is the blight has been mitigated. So, I mean, previous to the blight being mitigated, it would have scored extremely high on the blight area. But it would stand up and probably would be one of the top, if not the top ranking project, just because of that $440,000 project cost. We did take out any reference to job creation in the new rubric, and it would also score well on its contribution to the downtown and the central business zone. Although it is just slightly out of the central business zone.
Well, that was my follow-up question. It's not in the central business zone. And if I understand that, I mean, I don't know how the Faith Center in particular operates. I'm guessing they meet once a week, and I'm going to go with Sunday, maybe some weeknights too, but it's in terms of what it brings in terms of bodies to downtown, it's a very different kettle of fish than a hotel, which one, if just looking at the landing, is got people there every night, right? And I just have some concerns about saying it probably would score, or it seems like it would score. We don't know because we haven't scored this project. And if there's any way you guys can think of to put it through the process, I'd be happy. But I think we're setting ourselves up for all kinds of things down the road if we go this way. And we're always saying we want to be consistent. You know, everybody's held up against everybody else. And I think in this case, we're not doing that. And I'm a little perplexed as to why.
So I have, my concern for the project is allowing it to go forward. The intent is, at the end of the council action form, says to have permits by October 1st of this year, which is 7 weeks away, and to open for business in May of 2021. I'm kind of liking the idea of if we could run it through our current matrix, because we've got 2 years that since we ran it through the first time. And we didn't have, I mean, the money's already been set aside. It's sitting in Urban Renewal Agency budget. Is there any harm just taking the project as it now exists and running it through the matrix and bringing it back to the agency next month, and we'll have a little bit more information on this and a little more scoring. We didn't give all the money away this year anyway, so it's like, you know, this is a special case of call for project type of thing. I'm just throwing it out there as an option to consider, and I'm interested in hearing from Gary and Justin on this.
Well, I have a question for Gus. Could you tell us a little bit more about the church involvement in it, what they plan on doing, how frequently, and so forth?
Sure can. So I wanted to make a correction to what I heard Christine say. We don't actually have a signed lease in our hand from them yet. As COVID came in and EOU segued out, Faith Center emerged in the picture about 2 months ago, and they've been very involved since that time. We've been speaking regularly, and I understand what they want to do, and I understand their interest level is very high. In fact, they're interested more in occupying the entire station than they are just occupying the 3 bay area that EOU was going to occupy. Although their ambition was to do what we're doing, and they followed in behind the concept of allowing me to create the space, and then they would occupy it. We've since realized that we don't want to take any chances with turning the space over entirely to somebody, not knowing their full intention and knowing our commitment to downtown and quite frankly to the landing across the street. So we've elected to proprietor the the space that would be the community and the food offering, the espresso drive-through ourselves, and get that to where it needs to be for the community, and then allow Faith Center to come in and use the space that we'd originally intended for EOU. So Faith Center's Faith Center's hope for this space is to have it be a downtown ministry, have it be an opportunity for EOU, primarily the EOU age group. They have a very large following of EOU students, and they are wanting to meet that population of people in a space that is desirable to them, and the space that is easily accessed, and basically partner with the university in being able to meet their spiritual needs, if you will, as well as an open door to the university in a sense of being willing to share that space with any other needs that they may have, from an art show to a guest speaker, just very willing to entertain partnering with them in a variety of ways. So that's what I know. I know that they're anxious to move forward. I did want to say that I don't have that lease in my hand yet, but I'm talking to them weekly about that. So that's what I know for now.
Thank you.
Justin, did you have a question or comment?
Sorry, I was trying to add up numbers. I was going through actually a score sheet of one of the others, so I can kind of get a close idea, versus that way we can kind of compare it. I'm just not quite there and ready for it yet, though.
All right.
You know,
So what do people want to do here? Do you want to move forward with the decision? Justin, give Justin a few minutes to run the rubric and see what he comes up with, or
Mayor, I ran some numbers on it just really quickly. Just
okay.
The staff scoring based on the location and the type of use and the dollars. The staff scoring total would have been 110. The Slater building was 102, which was the highest ranked project that we had. On the other scores, if you gave it 10 points for blight, business viability, if you gave it 19, which was the lowest score that any of the projects received on average, 10 points for the community comment, and 30 points for the overall score, which is the lowest score that anybody received. The total score of this project would have been 179, which would have put it in second place. Dry Creek Capital was 196, Hines was 156. And the reason for the significant difference is this project would score 40 out of 50 points on return on investment because of the value of the project. That's the huge difference with this one compared to the ones that we saw this year.
Okay. Nicole, I see you had your hand up.
Just don't think we can do this. I don't know what, I feel like maybe I woke up in another universe, but we can't sit here on the fly and score something kind of hypothetically. I know Gus will never make me coffee again and probably not vote for me now, but this isn't about this project. This is about what we're doing right here with no public notice. We're making a decision on an entirely new project. I mean, we don't have the plan. We don't have anything that we would have in front of us if we were doing a URA meeting packet. I'm troubled by how we're doing this. And it's just because this will come up again and everyone will say, well, you did it for them. And we get ourselves in these positions because we like people and we like a project, as is the case here, but we're not going to follow the process.
There was no public notice on this?
It seems like a minor change as opposed to a new project. And I think there's not nearly enough here for the public to be aware of. In the way that we put out packets, as you know from just last week, we got a lot of information and the staff scoring, and every one of us scored it. And then we added up. I mean, we do our due diligence. And I don't feel like this is very transparent. And whether you like the project or not, this is the kind of thing that really irritates the public, because they'll think, oh, I thought that was going to be a classroom and an outdoors with kayaks out front and a hotel, but now it's a church for, youth students. It's not right. I'll stop talking. You know where I stand.
So perhaps we need to put this back in front of the URAC and go through the process.
By URAC, you mean the agency and the URAC together?
Yes.
Justin?
I don't say go back all the way in front of the URAC. I say go bring us more information for the next meeting next month in front of just us.
Almost like another, if you would, another application without taking
I don't know about a new application. I mean, just more of the scoring as we've done with the rest of them. I mean, we don't need to have him start from scratch.
Right.
He has a lot of time and money invested in this already, so why make him start over?
Yeah. Gary, question, comment?
Well, I am kind of conflicted about it, to tell you the truth. I understand what Nicole is saying. There is a precedent being set in a certain sense. It can certainly be awkward if you make a change in an instance like this and then other projects come forward maybe expecting something similar. However, I go back to my 2 terms on the Planning Commission, which was admittedly many moons ago. But we were always taught at that time as planning commissioners that these kinds of things do not involve a legal precedence. They're a case-by-case basis, and yeah, it may be a little awkward when you have somebody else come in and say, well, hey, you did it for them. But the fact is, you can make this kind of a decision without committing yourself to anybody else. I think Gust has done a very good and patient job of working with us to get this thing done. And I would think that even what's being proposed would be better for the downtown and for the community than doing nothing and leaving it sit as it is. If we wait for another month, which I'm open to if the council obviously wants to do that, but what is going to change about the outcome, if anything? I don't know. Like I say, I really can see both sides of the argument, but I think that we've seen enough on this project, as well as what Gust can do with the project across the street. I think that it's getting to be time to quit dragging feet.
Well, and this is a large investment by his part as well. You know, he's done a great job, as Gary said, across the street, and he's turned on a big eyesore into a very nice part of our downtown. So, I mean, he's not just a normal person with the application coming in.
So, Robert, you mentioned that there were some public comments relative to this project that you had, or something else?
No, I don't have anything for the agency in terms of public comment. So just let me go ahead and just toss a couple of ideas out. The concerns expressed about whether or not this would set a precedence, I think you guys have collectively done a good job of identifying what those challenges could be down the road. And so I think that I've heard a couple of suggestions. One is to make a decision now. The other one is to flesh out a little bit more of an application, if you will, that identifies the project in more detail so that it could then be scored by the agency. And that would also allow for additional time for people to understand what's going on from a due diligence standpoint. I think, Nicole, that's kind of what you were advocating, was to be more thorough with this, to make it very clear that this is a significant change in the project, not a minor revision. I don't know if I don't know that going through the entire process again makes sense, but one of the things that I would offer, if the agency does ask for a essentially a rescoring of the revised project, that for the blight element, that the scoring for blight should be based on the condition of the property when the application was submitted in 2018, not today after the mitigation has been done for the hazard. In terms of what more information would you have a month from today in terms of the project and the scoring? I think the answers to that are a little more information on the tenant, whether or not that has been solidified. So that would be something that you don't have for sure locked in today. And then just a little bit more detail in terms of what is the appearance of the project. The things that you have today that I don't think will be different, that weigh heavily on the agency's scoring, are the staff scoring things that are related to where is it and what is the type of use, what is the investment, and those sorts of things. And so I think part of the discussion would be for the agency is, given the known factors in terms of scoring, would your decision be changed one way or the other based on the answers related to the tenant, or is it more importantly, we want to make sure we go through a more thorough process to review these other elements of it, much in the same way that the agency would review an initial call for projects, recognizing that much of the improvement to the property was addressed as part of the initial vetting of the project. And I said that in a bit of a cumbersome way. So I think there's value in the public having more information and the agency having more information. I don't know how much that additional information would adjust the agency's decision. The mayor made a comment about there's additional funding out there. So I think that if you wanted to take the approach of taking a look at this as if it is a completely new project, almost kind of like a hybrid out of cycle, then maybe it would be fair to consider whether or not to award additional funding beyond the 50,000, because there are some dollars remaining in the budget year if we're asking for additional work to be done on it, not just kind of tossed out in there based on what the mayor said about we do have some additional funding. So now I'll shut up.
All right.
I like the way all that sounds, Robert. I think getting more information on what the project as a whole looks like, sort of the way an original packet would, fleshing out what's going on with the tenant and firming that up would be good. And Justin, I understand what you meant when you said, Gus isn't just anybody, right? He's really proven himself. But I think it's really important that we treat him like he is just anybody. All due respect, man, because I know what you've done for the community. But as soon as we start treating people like they're not just anybody, we set ourselves up to a lot of criticism. And so I think just cooling our jets for a short time, getting a little more information, running this at a public meeting in a month would serve us. It would, I think, lend legitimacy to the project and to our funding of that project if we move forward.
So in making that suggestion, Robert brought this up. There is the potential for Gus to come back and ask for additional funds rather than the original 50,000. So if we were to postpone it and say, bring us back sort of more clarification next month. And by the way, we would consider it as a whole new project with potential for additional funding. So with recognizing that we have a cap of 75,000, the request could be, another 50% of what he's got. Is that what, how do people think about that idea?
I think that I would be willing to consider a month delay if we will consider the possibility of additional funding.
I agree. And I don't necessarily consider this, an out of cycle, because we've looked at it before, but some things have changed. So, but since we do have an additional funding, just looking at it as a revision, but with a little bit more of an opportunity for more funding. So I think you're right, Nicole, that having a little bit more on the tenants would be helpful, and maybe even a little bonus for Gus that works out.
So Gus, is that something that you think you can pull off in a month's time to pull a little bit more information together and with the idea that there's another 25K in the hot hat for you?
Yeah, I think I want to work with you guys. So whatever we need to do, I totally understand Nicole's perspective, and I appreciate the fact that folks may want to slander what we're doing if we don't follow protocol. And so I'm fully willing to, if that's how it needs to be reset, I'm fully willing to do that. And I think that the project will just be something that Grande has a huge need for, especially in these uncertain times. And we are in a place now where there's no question that we're moving forward. And there's no question that we want to make this a fantastic destination place. And so I think giving me the opportunity to re-establish what we're doing would probably be beneficial for you guys to see.
Okay, so given I've heard some consent and had seen some head nods about the idea of bringing additional information to us in a month with an added funding request. What do we do if we just kind of do we want to table this until next month, or do we want to keep it or just not take any action at all?
Mayor, before someone makes the motion to table, because that stops all discussion.
Yeah.
I'll kind of recap what I think the instructions would be, which would be to ask for an updated application from the applicant that would be considered at a September agency meeting, and that the charge for the staff would be to score the application as if it were to be a new application with the site conditions as they were at the original application as it pertains to blight, and that the project would be eligible for funding above the original $50,000 award. And so with that understanding, if that's correct as what the agency is looking for, then a motion to table until the September meeting would be appropriate.
Anybody want to make that motion?
I so move.
All right. So could I get?
Second.
Okay, so we got a first and a second. Let's get a clarification on the motion again. Just the motion, Robert, is to bring the that staff will do. We'll get additional information and score it and bring that back to us with the potential for a revised funding level.
I think it would be a motion to table the agenda item until the September meeting as discussed.
Okay, but so that's the motion, no discussion then.
Correct.
All right.
Did you have a second?
We did, Corinne. All right, we have a motion to table the item until next month. I'll take a roll call vote, please.
Steve Clemens,
You're muted,
Steve
Steve.
Clemens,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Corinne Dudo,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Mary Ann Meisner is absent excused. Justin Rock,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Gust. Appreciate your willingness to work with us. We'll have something for you next month, and hopefully that won't slow you down too much with getting permits.
Thank you all. Appreciate your help.
Welcome. So we move to district manager comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the agency. We did receive a letter that was addressed to the agency regarding the Liberty Theater, but the matter is actually more of a city council related item. So I will address that during the public comments for city council.
Okay. Is there a reason that we would put that under council and not the urban renewal district?
Yeah, because the issue has to do with the wall between the city's property and the Liberty Theater.
Okay. All right. That may.
I'd be happy to read the letter now and do it again during the city council.
Let's go ahead and wait until council meeting. I think there's some elements that probably are germane to the urban renewal district, but we're probably it may get kicked back to us in some way, shape, or form. So, okay. Is there anything else, Robert?
No, thank you.
Agency member comments, Nicole, Corinne, Justin, Gary?
No.
No? Okay. I will adjourn the meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency, and I'm going to go quiet for a bit while I shuffle some papers around, and then I'll call the city council meeting to order. We're live, I hope. Call to order a meeting of the City of LeGrande. Say that this meeting is being broadcast over Charter Cable Channel 180 and also on LeGrande Live website. People that wished to make written comments should have submitted those by Friday last, and those comments will be read out loud during public comments and or during the item on the agenda in which the comment is relative. With that, I would like a roll call, please.
Steve, can you also mention that there's an executive session at the end
Yes.
as well?
I was going to do that after the roll call, but I can do that
Okay.
now. So per ORS 192-6701, we are participating electronically. The city council will meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-6602D for the purpose of discussing labor negotiations, and we'll do that immediately after council comments this evening. Now we could have a roll call, please.
Steve Clemens,
Here.
Gary Lillard,
Here.
Corinne Dudo,
Here.
Nicole Howard,
Here.
Marianne Meisner is absent excused. Justin Rock.
Here.
All right. We have 5 out of 7 positions tonight. Soon to have 7 out of 7, I hope. We have a consent agenda with one item on that on there for the regular approval of the regular session minutes from July 1. I'll entertain a motion, but at this point, since I wasn't here on July 1, I'm going to abstain from a vote. So someone of the last 4 of you to make a motion in a second.
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
All right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor, let's do a roll call, please. Roll
Steve
vote.
Clemens
Abstained?
has Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Corinne Dudo,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Marianne Meisner is absent excused. Justin Rock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Robert, any public comments this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to touch on 2 things. One was we did receive a letter from the Liberty Theater Foundation. It's addressed to the Urban Renewal Agency members. It's a bit of an overlapping topic between the city as the adjacent property owner and then the agency as it may pertain to some elements. So I'm going to go ahead and read this at this time. It's dated the 31st of July of 2020. Dear Urban Renewal Agency members, my name is Ashley O'Toole. I'm the board chairman for the Liberty Theater Foundation. First of all, let me briefly provide an update on all of the progress that we have made since the last time you've heard from us. 2019 has been a huge year. Somewhat highlights include the completion of the new roof, major demolition and construction of the front lobby, including new staircases to the mezzanine level. Extensive facade work was done, including laying of hundreds of blonde bricks and the installation of our new canopy. In the auditorium, the wall that separates it from the lobby was framed in, as was the platform that is used for both ADA viewing and tech booth. There's a lot more to list, but we'll move on. 2020 has been a promising year as well, and the momentum is still high. We have been so excited and grateful to establish a long relationship with Associated Design and Engineering Solutions just across the street from City Hall and Liberty Theater. There have been numerous construction planning meetings taking place in cooperation with engineers, designers, members of the foundation, and our general contractor. As of this writing, we're expecting any day the issuance of the construction permit we require in the building department to proceed with finishing the project. As of late, all of the HVAC equipment has been ordered and installation has begun. Materials for the sprinkler system were also recently paid for and delivered. And finally, a large platform has been built high above the auditorium floor in anticipation of finishing the ceiling, as well as the installation of the HVAC system, electrical system, and sprinkler system. We've recently identified an obstacle in our project that I'd like to address with the agency today. It's an issue that we feel involves many aspects of the URA's purpose, and we're asking you for guidance and resolution. The goal of this letter is to begin the conversation, but also to ask that our team may be invited to give more thorough presentation to the agency in the near future. We're asking for a work session to be put on the calendar. In the meantime, here's an overview of what we'd like to discuss. The western exterior wall of the Liberty Theater, which runs along the City Hall's parking lot, has long been the source of water penetration into the theater. Evidence of this is found along nearly the entire length of the interior of the theater. The source of the water is runoff from the adjacent parking lot and sidewalk. It seems over the years the parking lot has been repaved and slowly rising in elevation, and especially after the sidewalk was installed along the wall, water drains from those surfaces into our brick wall. This is especially bad because the water enters our building above thicker foundation wall. It is now above the original grade where the wall was much thinner. For perhaps several decades, this has caused slow but apparent damage to the structural integrity of the exterior wall and foundation. It has also made us wary to continue construction progress under the threat of future water penetration after the theater is complete. With a strong recommendation from our prime contractor, as well as the folks of Associated Design and Engineering, it has been determined that a resolution must be found before we continue to invest so much money into the restoration of the building. The same team has done a great job of scoping out exactly what needs to be done to remedy the water penetration, and it provided us a scope of work and a cost estimate. We're turning to the URA today in hopes of developing a partnership that leads to a resolution in both financing of and repair of this issue so we can continue the meticulous restoration of this historic landmark. As I stated before, it's our belief that an issue like this is well within the scope of the URA's goals to restore and remove blight throughout the urban renewal district, including the deterioration of historic buildings. Let's please arrange for a work session on this topic, and in the meantime, I would be so happy to offer each of the agency members and staff a personal tour of the theater. I believe it would be helpful for the members to see for themselves both the extensive progress being made at the Liberty Theater and to illustrate the issue at hand. Masks and social distancing would be mandatory, of course. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Ashley O'Toole. So that was the letter that was provided. I had been scheduled, I think this last week, to meet with Jeff Clark at the theater to do a walkthrough and talk about this issue, but I've had to reschedule that. And we have my suggestion would be, we'll take a look at this from the staff perspective and have a little bit more conversation. And then as appropriate, we'll re-engage the city council and or the agency as appropriate.
That makes sense. Robert, this is one of those moments where it's almost impossible not to be wearing two different hats. But
right.
If this is city property that abuts the theater, and yet both pieces of property reside in the urban renewal district, if there is a financial need to participate in some type of corrective action, is that something that the urban renewal district can cover, or does it have to come out, or would it come out of city funds?
Well, Mayor, I think the first question that has to be answered is, what, if any, responsibility do the parties on both sides of the wall, where is the responsibility there? This is not necessarily a very simple question. So I'd really like an opportunity to explore this in a little bit more detail with them.
Okay.
And then we'll come back to you and share some additional information.
Okay, very good.
Good question, Robert. Is the sidewalk
Yeah.
the city's, or is that to the building adjacent? Is that the city's
sidewalk
property?
runs along. I believe that the property line is actually the wall.
Okay.
I know that Mike may know that for sure. But we'll
That's correct.
go ahead.
Yeah, you're correct, Robert. The property line is the wall, so the sidewalk is part of the parking lot infrastructure.
Okay. Any other questions for Robert before we move on to other
You
items?
had our city attorney look at this letter before going any further.
I got it on. I actually didn't check my email over the weekend, so I literally saw it this morning.
Okay.
So
I didn't
it's
think
too
that would
early
be-
for me to really
to-
provide any additional feedback at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Robert.
Okay.
Yeah, we have some homework to do before we can provide any more information to you.
Okay. And luckily we're in the
This-
dry season, so that's a good thing. Any other couple public comments to read, Robert?
No, but I thought that this would be a good point in the meeting to just kind of provide an update from the meeting that Stu Spence and I had with members of the Farmers Market board and their incoming new manager. At our last council meeting, there was a number of public comment related to the farmers market, and I just wanted to kind of share some key points from our meeting. And this is from a memo that I provided to the council this afternoon. Stu Spence and I had a good meeting with the new manager of the farmers market, along with one of the co-chairs of the board and two other board members last week. The key points of the meeting were that the relationship between the market and the city is good, and the board as a body has not expressed any concerns about the relationship. The board was enlightened and appreciative of the support the city currently provides, including extra garbage patrols, facilitating the shade canopy installation, installing the market sign above the bus stop, pressure washing the park, providing additional electrical outlets to meet their needs, and assisting with a variety of special requests. The farmers market is an essential service in a safe place to get food, and it's an important part of our downtown. The sudden closure of Max Square in response to the major outbreak of COVID-19 was concerning and upsetting, I think, for the board and for the city as well. We spent a great deal of time on this topic, and assured that it was highly unlikely that we would find ourselves in a situation where closing the market on such short notice was warranted in the future. As you'll recall, we essentially, it was a 2-day notice that we needed to revisit the use of Max Square. And we do think it would be beneficial to establish a long-term agreement for the use of Max Square for the market to expand on the current agreement that's in place for the closure of 4th Street. We have an agreement in place that talks to the closure of 4th Street for the market, but expanding it to Max Square as well would make sense. Additionally, the city suggested partnering with the farmers market on a video promoting the market and reinforcing the importance of the market as a food source and asset to our downtown. We think we could fund this as part of our COVID-19 outreach to help encourage people to shop downtown. We would highlight the fact that the market is a place people can go and shop safely for fresh local produce, and that it has an economic benefit to the community as a whole. Our next steps is the city will develop a draft agreement, work out the details with the farmers market board prior to bringing that action back to the council for approval. The intent would be to retain the annual permitting process to address fees and refine details on an annual basis. And then we would also work with the market manager on the video idea. So that's just kind of a quick overview. I'm sure you gathered from the enlightening and appreciative comment that I asked Stu for some help with the crafting of the memo based on his recollection of the meeting. So those 2 words were attributed to his input. So I think we're in a pretty good shape with the farmers market, and we came up with some good ideas for some things that we could do that I think would be a benefit.
Okay, good, excellent. Good stuff. I would have, we could have probably dealt with that or talked about it during manager comments, but you brought it up now, it's fine. Okay, no other public comments then. We will move into public hearings. we have two public hearings. The first one is consideration of an ordinance and a second reading. And that is about imposing a 3% sales tax on recreational marijuana and referring that to voters. And I will say that the public hearing is continued from July 1st, 2020. And this is a legislative hearing. The rules of order were read in their entirety during the regular session on July 1, and the city manager is requesting that the city council table the ordinance and not, I repeat, not conduct a final reading or consider the adoption this evening. With that, I'll open it to Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. When we brought this item to you for the first reading, one of the things that we touched on was it was in anticipation of receiving a petition to place before the voters in November an action that would lift the current ban on recreational sales of marijuana within the city limits. We, I think, made it clear that our intent would be to ask the voters to, at the same time, impose a sales tax on the recreational sales. The petition was not received before the deadline, and the applicant that pulled the petition had indicated that she was unable to get the required number of signatures in the time frame. And based on this, we don't think it would be prudent to place on the ballot a tax measure for something that can't be legally sold within the city limits. We consulted with the city attorney and he concurs, and therefore our recommendation would be that we not proceed with the second reading and that this would be tabled until such time as the council asked to bring it back for consideration, which I would anticipate would be in conjunction with an action to place recreational marijuana on the ballot in a future election. And I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
Robert, I know that we received at least one letter in regards to this from the same citizen. Is that something we need to hear before we entertain this motion?
Well, I think that individual counselors received a letter. We did not receive, to the best of my knowledge, a letter asking that this be the letter be read. The synopsis of the letter was essentially indicating that the person who had been circulating the petition was unable to gather enough signatures and was asking that the city council of your own volition place the matter on the ballot in November. The challenge with that is we don't have the time for the necessary notices for the city council to take an action to get that on the ballot in November. So it really is, it's a moot point in that regard. And also, if we go back to the last time that the city council considered marijuana, the position of the council was not to lift the ban on their own, but to, if a petition was received, put it before the voters from a way of going back from the last time it was considered. So
Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, Robert, has anybody advised the letter writer of the time consideration, or will somebody?
we certainly can.
I have not, but I was going to tomorrow. And I think
Yeah,
I can, unless Robert wants to respond, but I was going to, we got another email this evening and I was going to respond tomorrow. Is that
I can be, I'd be happy to do it, Mayor, or you can do it as well.
okay? I'll take care of it and I'll do it tomorrow and we'll go from there. So I had a couple of questions, but now I'm spacing them off. Before we entertain a motion to table, because there'll be no discussion after that point, Is it relevant? Again, I was not here last month to participate in any conversation. Should I abstain from this motion, or is it we just moving forward with it?
We're just moving forward. You don't have to
Okay.
abstain.
So since we've had a first reading, and under the possibility that a petition or an initiative is qualified for the next general election, which is in 2 years, would we then just pull this off the table and do a second reading at that point and vote?
I think that what we would most likely do is go ahead and go back through a process to do 2 readings.
Okay.
First of all, I think to steal a word from the last meeting, for transparency purposes, giving people plenty of opportunity, we'd have to double check to make sure on the timing. But I think that the most prudent thing to do would be to go ahead and do 2 complete new readings at such time that we'd be looking at putting it on the ballot.
Okay. Any questions for Robert before we entertain a motion? Then I recommend that
I had
we.
one thing, Steve.
Yes, Corinne.
Just, Robert, I had already pointed this or given you this question of why don't we just go through with this if even if it's not on the ballot? And I think that would be kind of confusing, but maybe you could just share that.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, asking people to impose a tax on something that can't legally be purchased at the present time. I don't know that we would get an appropriate response, and we'd be sending an appropriate message. I think that people would be confused as to why it's there. If it passes, I think there will be confusion about, okay, well, we have this tax in place. Why can't I now open a recreational facility? I think it would put the city council in a pretty difficult situation, because just thinking out loud, if a tax is imposed, one could make the argument that translates to approval of recreational sales by the community. I'm convinced people would attempt to make that argument.
Well, and it's not logical. Robert's right. It's like, we're going to tax tea, but you can't actually drink tea. It seems a little bit fraught.
It does, but I just wanted to put that out there so the logic is understood.
Yeah.
And one of my thoughts was, okay, if we've already spent some money on lawyers to figure this out, why not go through with this? But we can just kind of keep that in our back pocket. Yeah.
We're not going to have to spend a lot of extra money twice for the pieces that we've put in place so far.
So Robert, before we go into a motion, is there any public testimony to read relative to this other than what you mentioned?
There's not.
Okay. So at this point, unless there's additional discussion, I'll entertain a motion as it's written down there. So it does include.
I move that the proposed ordinance referring a 3% tax on recreational marijuana that would go before the voters during the general election 2020 be tabled until such time as the city council decides to bring it back for consideration.
Second.
All right, so we've got Gary with the motion and Justin with a second. It's a motion to table, so there's no discussion. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Steve Clemens,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Corinne Dudo,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Marianne Misner is absent excused, Justin Rock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Moving on now to our second public hearing, and this is an ordinance first reading for a vacation request of public rights of way. And I will open the public hearing and ask the city recorder, Kayla, to read the rules of order for the public hearing in their entirety.
The City Council will conduct one public hearing tonight to consider a vacation request file number 01-VAC-20, applicant Sarah and Jonathan Rankin. The hearing will proceed as follows. The mayor will request a staff report, which includes applicable criteria and standards for the issue under consideration in the application. The mayor will then accept written testimony relating to the application. There is a 3-minute time limit for testimony. All written testimony must be directed towards the applicable criteria. Oregon land use law requires that all issues raised by a participant during the hearing must sufficiently clear and specific to allow the hearing body and other parties an opportunity to respond to those issues. Failure to raise the issues during the hearing may invalidate a future appeal. The meeting will be available for viewing via the city scheduled charter communications channel 180 beginning at 6:00 p.m. on August 3rd, 2020 on the Grande Alive website at legrandealive.tv/city-events/ or on the Eastern Oregon Alive.tv Facebook page. Any person that wanted to submit written comments or questions in advance of the meeting had until 5:00 p.m. on Friday, July 31st, 2020 to be read into record during the public hearing. The written comments were to be emailed to rstrop@cityoflegrand.org by the previously mentioned deadline. The proceedings are being electronically recorded to be converted to written minutes. Written testimony will be read in the following order: proponents, then opponents, then any parties neutral to the application. If additional documents or new evidence is introduced during the hearing, any participants may request a continuation of the hearing. Any participants may request that the hearing records be kept open for 7 days to submit additional written evidence or testimony for the purpose of responding to new evidence. Unless waived, the applicant has 7 days to submit a written response. Members of the council may ask questions of the staff at any time. The mayor will then close the public hearing or continue the public hearing at a specific time and place. All decisions must be based on findings of fact from the staff report or evidence and testimony received, which relate to the criteria of the land use decision. A counselor must declare ex parte or pre-hearing contact, including the person's name and the nature of the discussion, as well as any site visitations to the area or questions. Counselors should declare any personal or financial interest in this matter and may disqualify themselves from participation in the hearing. Does any counselors wish to make a declaration? Hearing none, the rules of order have been read.
All right, then. Mike, this looks like it's your show, so I'll let you do the staff report, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. This request began before you in June at your city council meeting where you accepted the application. It's been a fairly long process for the applicant. There's a very significant public notice process, and the applicant had to obtain signatures of consent in order to have a complete application. Anyway, that occurred on June 3rd. Then the Planning Commission considered this application in July during their July 14th public hearing, during their July 14th meeting, and by unanimous vote recommended approval to you as the City Council. And so on your CAF, this is an image that you saw back in June. This is a subdivision plat that was platted in 1891. And it's the Gangloff edition. It includes all of Pioneer Park and some of the surrounding property that is owned by the Rankin family. And the streets that are highlighted in yellow on that map are streets that in 1893, for some reason, the developer or property owner went through a process to have those streets vacated, so they were essentially erased from the subdivision in 1893, but they left all of the ones that are in that salmon color, or kind of that red shading. and which have existed ever since then. None of those streets have been constructed. They all are, most of them anyway, are within the park, within the pool parking lot. Some of them go through the park shops building, the skate park, through all the old armory buildings that are out there. Anyway, these are streets that are not right of way that we need for any purposes. And so this process that we're going through is literally just going to clean the map up, erase all of these so we don't have to honor these street right of ways as new development occurs in the area. And specifically for the Rankin property, they are looking at transferring ownership of that property. It's been for sale, and their sale is contingent upon not having any encumbrances on that property, and the two little stubs of pink right of way that are on their property are an encumbrance that they have to work around if they are not vacated. So that's where we're at. We've had no objections. I've had a number of calls from residents asking for clarification of what is a right-of-way vacation, what does that mean? And at this point, everybody is in agreement that this just makes sense, and why was it not done a long time ago? And so that's where we're at. And tonight's a first reading, and then at the end of this, we would just continue it to next month to have our second reading and ordinance adoption if you support it. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. Just for clarification, where is the Rankin property on this map?
The Rankin property is on the left side of the map. It is tax lot 300, and it actually bridges across that kind of that gray shaded line where those two pink squares are.
Okay.
So Mike, there's just the two little stubs of Jefferson, Jerome and Julius streets that are on the Rankin property. And then if I read this correctly, about 2/3 of the property is inside the city limit, and the other that's what that gray dashed line is.
Yes, that's the city limit.
Urban renewal. That's the urban growth boundary.
Yes.
Okay. So in many ways, this is really just a cleanup for the city, because a lot of those salmon colored streets are actually in the park and under the park.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's too bad. I really like the names Douglas, Jerome, and Julius streets. It's, I don't think we have any. I think they only exist there in the community, if I'm right.
Yes, there is, and there's a renaming process. So if you want to start renaming streets, we can.
No, I don't want to go there. Any other questions for Mike? Robert, was there any public testimony that needs to be read into the record?
No, sir.
All right. Council discussion or comments? All right, then announce that the public hearing is continued to September 2nd, 2020, at which time the proposed ordinance is scheduled to be read a second time by title only and considered for adoption. And if there's no other discussion, I will ask for a reading of the proposed ordinance by title only.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, vacating all of Douglas Street between Walnut Street and Oak Street, Jerome Street or Jerry Street west of West Street, Jerome Street or Jerry Street between Walnut Street and Cedar Street, Julius Street west of West Street, Julius Street between Walnut Street and Cedar Street, Walnut Street between Palmer Avenue, Division Street and Z Avenue, Oak Street between Palmer Avenue, Division Street and Douglas Street, and the entirety of all alleys within blocks 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, all with an amended plat of King Lofts addition to the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, according to the recorded plat of said addition, and declaring an effective date.
I missed that. Kayla, can you say it again?
Absolutely not.
That's by far my most favorite ordinance, and we get to read this again next month.
Steve, you're muted.
Okay, moving on then. We don't have any unfinished business. 3 items of new business. The first one is to consider a baseball field agreement with Eastern Oregon University. And take it away, Stu.
Hey, well, first of all, I appreciate that because I'm going to change my business cards to Julius Street because that's amazing. So the agreement before you tonight is, the university planned to add baseball, but they don't have a baseball field. So they need to use our facilities for their games, practices, activities, etc. This agreement formalizes the fees, the scheduling, the maintenance, the whole agreement. It's a 3-year deal. It's a pretty straightforward agreement. I'm not sure if anybody has any questions.
Questions for Stu?
This has gone through Parks Commission.
Yes.
Okay.
So with this, I know we have a lot of issues already with their baseball parks and what we have going on. You have a pretty good schedule where you could add something like the college playing in the baseball park.
It's going to be a huge challenge. I appreciate you recognizing that. I had several meetings with the athletic director of the university, the high school baseball coach, and I. We hammered it all out. I think they both bent a little bit to work it out where they could both jointly use the field at peak times. I think our biggest challenge is going to be baseball season starts in February usually. 2 years ago we were plowing snow off the field. You couldn't even, there's no way you could get grown adults on the field without destroying it for the rest of the year. So they've got some pretty good provisions in place. One of them is that nobody's allowed on the field unless we allow them on the field for maintenance reasons. Turf, as you can imagine, a little bit of mud, a little bit of water, it's literally destroyed for the rest of the year. So they all want, obviously, to play baseball. They all want to manage the field and manage the space. And I think we came to a really good agreement in the end. So yes, it will be a challenge. It will be very difficult. And it'll be some creative practice times probably on the university's football field, away games in February, some other things like that. So I feel good about it. We've worked it out. We talked it through.
I just want to make sure, because I know a lot of people put a lot of time and effort and money into building the park that we have.
They have, and not the city, not all the city, lots and lots of volunteer effort and time from, little kid parents all the way up to high school parents. And that's the reason it's such a great park, with all that volunteer help.
So Stu, the Pioneer Park has, if I remember its layout, there's more than one ball field in the park. Are they able to move around those, or are some of those fields designed for Little League versus College League?
Yeah, both. There's two fields that are college size. One is Optimist and one is Lions. So we talked about rotating. We talked about not practicing on the field. We talked about practicing elsewhere, like on the synthetic turf at the university. We talked about practicing in the middle of the field at the park. So we definitely will work together to make sure that one doesn't get beat. The kind of the crown jewel Optimist field. Okay,
very good.
Did you also have the Little League and the not the high school, but the private leagues
involved in the process? Not so much. I reached out to them. The problem is I don't know how to say this politically correct, but they really get entangled. And the fact is they're not using those two fields. So they will be eventually when their kids get older, but they're not user groups of those two fields. So I engaged the user groups of those fields that were impacted instead. So we didn't get into basically a convoluted discussion about who gets to play when and why, when really it's not relevant to them.
And Stu, remind me again, just there's going to be turf put on the infield of Optimus Field?
Well, that's a great clarification. So the plan was, when we went through the budget process, to partner with the university and the school district to put down turf on the infield, basically all the bases and the infield and the aprons to the dugouts, right? So if you kind of look at that diamond shape of the infield, that would be turf. Then insert COVID and all the funding dries up for the university and the school district. So they both pulled the plug on that project. So this agreement will be on natural grass. The turf I was talking about was at the university on the football field that already exists, because they're going to have to practice over there so we don't ruin the park. That's the conversation we had with the two coaches.
How are you going to play in March and April and sometimes May?
Yeah, I don't know. We're going to manage it. We talked it through, and they think they can do it. I think I wish that the university would have thought about this way before bringing baseball back, but they didn't. So we're here to help them and be a community partner. But I also want to take care of the facility, obviously, like Justin said, for all the volunteer groups and kids and youth that we have as well.
Okay, so then my follow-up question is, and I work there, so nothing you're saying is like a surprise. Is there a provision that says, if you guys don't think the fields are play ready and you want to preserve them, because the field can be in such a condition that it's not good to play on it, do you have that call?
Yeah. Yep. Everything goes through me and my office. We have a flag system on the fields already. Red flag means stop. Green flag means playable.
Okay.
So if that green flag is up, they're good to go. And they know that. And we will work together with them to enforce that. There's also provisions of their maintenance crew providing time. So my maintenance crew doesn't have to. There's all infield conditioning and painting lines and that kind of thing, because my guys don't have time for that, especially in the spring. They're so slammed with youth baseball and, getting our parks ready for spring that there's no way. So yeah, we've also built in provisions about storing equipment and working on the fields under our permission / my permission, my staff's permission. So yeah.
Sounds like you got it covered, Stu. Thank you. Any other questions before we move on? All right, Robert, any public testimony that needs to be read on this issue?
No, sir.
Oh. Okay, so unless there's other conversation or discussion questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we authorize the city manager to sign the agreement between the city and Eastern Oregon University for the use of baseball fields at Pioneer Park.
I'll second it for the sake of doing it. So we have a motion from Corinne and I second. Additional comments, discussion?
Good
Roll
job,
call.
Stu.
Yes, good job, Stu. Roll call vote, please.
Steve Clemens,
Yes.
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Corinne Dudo,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Marianne Meisner's absent excused, Justin Rock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Okay, very
Thank you.
good. All right, moving on to the second item of new business is a final plat for a major land petition off of Guildcrest Drive up on Highland Hill area. And Mike, this is another land use issue, so take it away.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mayor and Council. I think it's your second page in your packet is a picture of the final plat. The staff report has some additional pictures if we need to refer to those, but I think we can probably tackle everything off this page. So this is similar to a minor land petition, which a minor land petition, all petitions for that matter, are 3 lots or less. And what makes this a major land petition is that there's a street right-of-way dedication associated with it. So it's kind of a hybrid between a petition and a subdivision. except we're not requiring that they actually build a street or do any of that. This is a road that already exists. It's identified in our transportation plan as a future collector street that would bridge 12th Street all the way over to 4th or Miller Drive and then on to 2nd. And this is actually a street that was part of a connector to the Ridge subdivision years ago when that development came forward. But this is privately owned. It's essentially I used this term at the Planning Commission, which created confusion, but this property essentially is like a flag lot. The Gildcrest Drive is the flagpole of this property, and that flagpole happens to be a private street that serves, I think, 7 or 8 properties in there. And so anyway, the Planning Commission approved the preliminary plat last month. The applicant is looking at finalizing this petition so that they can transfer ownership. Parcel 2 has a pending offer, which will be constructed with a new dwelling. And so, subject to your approval, this would then go to the county commissioners that are required to sign on any kind of a plat that has a street dedication. So from a formality standpoint, it'll go to them probably next month, then get recorded, and then Gildcrest Drive will then be a public street. And then just maybe answer a question before it's asked is at the time that parcel 2 sells, that particular buyer or property owner will be coming to the city and asking for city services. They're already in the process of coordinating that with Public Works for extending a main line from 12th Street to that property. It'll actually extend a little bit past it for a future service to parcel 3. And then once water and sewer is installed, they'll be paving Gildcrest Drive with a 22-foot wide paved surface that'll extend at least to the driveway in parcel 2, if not farther, depending on what that property owner does for shared costs with other neighbors. But anyway, that's future development. So the request before you tonight is just to accept the final plat and that street dedication so we can move forward with getting this completed. Do you have any questions?
A couple of questions, Mike. The tax lot, I think it's 501, which is designated as 1602 Gildcrest Drive, is identified as an island now. But this is not, that property is being created as an island, not at their not at their action, but as an adjacent property owner's action. So is that the reason why we wouldn't, like annex that now? Because they're just sort of a passive victim to the situation? Is that the case?
Well, kind of. You're a little bit ahead of the game because we're not quite to the annexation stage. That's coming later. But
okay.
So right now, the property that is being divided is in the urban growth boundary.
Okay.
And so is the property that you referred to across Gildcrest on that north side at the 1602 Gildcrest.
Okay.
They're also in the urban growth boundary. And so once this partition happens, then and that property owner comes in for the 1604 Gildcrest, which is that parcel 2.
Right.
They will be asked to annex as part of receiving that service.
Okay.
And so we'll annex the road right of way and that property in. And at that point in time, 1602 Gildcrest will officially become an island of urban growth boundary surrounded by city limits.
Okay. Then I withdraw my question, and we'll deal with the annexation when it's due. So
yes, and that's a philosophical discussion that we can have at that time of what do we do with islands.
Very good. So any questions for Mike?
Were neighboring property owners, was there any opposition from them?
No, not for the partition. The only comments that I received, but I received comments from 1602 Gilchrist Drive. We received comments, they're off the map, but to the property at the very end of Gilchrist Drive. Their only concern was that they didn't have to pay for the water sewer infrastructure that this property owner needs, nor should they, do they want to pay for the paving of the street, which is, you know, a requirement for that future development. And the short answer is they have no responsibility or obligation to pay for any of that. But the advice that I did give them is that if they wanted to connect, now is probably the best time for them to partner with this owner and share in the costs of those improvements. Because if they come back later to tap in, they're going to be paying based on a formula that we use for water and sewer taps and buying into the system, you know, reimbursing for mainline extensions, and that's all based on an ordinance and a formula that Public Works uses. And it may be a cost savings for them to just contribute in the actual cost today rather than pay that formula later. But anyway, that's a research thing for them. They just throw some options out there, but otherwise, no objections.
Anybody else? Robert, any public testimony to be read?
No, sir.
Okay. If I have no more council discussion, I will entertain a motion.
I move that the final plat for major land partition file number 01 MJP 20 be accepted for signature and recording.
Second.
Gary seconds. We have a motion and a second. Additional discussion? I'll ask for roll call vote, please.
Steve Clemens,
Yes?
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Corinne Dudo,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Marianne Meisner's absent excused, Justin Rock,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, very good. Last item of new business is to consider a resolution for annexation of a property at 109 Hawthorne Dive. I believe that's a typo. It should be Drive. So let's see. This is again a land use thing. Mike, you're on.
Oh, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this request is similar to what you'll probably see on that last application when the future event occurs. But this is a vacant property that I think recently changed hands earlier this year, and the owner is looking at building a house on there. I think they're already in the building permit review process, and they need city services, and they're in the urban growth boundary. The city limit line is that gray line that kind of zigzags around their property, and they've signed their annexation agreement. They need your blessing for annexation so they can receive city water and sewer.
All right, very good. I'm just looking at the map there in Exhibit A. The property just barely touches the city limits. Is that correct?
Well, sort of. The whole, but the east half of their north boundary line is adjacent to the city limits.
Okay, I see that. Yes.
And then it just touches a point on that east boundary. But
okay. Questions for Mike?
So what are the red hash marks?
The red hash marks are, those are just from the assessor plat. I think those are probably subdivision phases that were platted over the years. You know, so like one of those is the Model Air Heights subdivision. And there's probably different phases and additions.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions for Mike? Robert, public comment, testimony?
No, sir.
All right. Council.
I have another question. Is there a little road already? It looks like a little curved road from Hawthorne, or actually from Model Air to the property. Is that already there and already paved or not?
It is not paved, but it is already there. So that tax lot 4700,
Yeah.
that is between where Hawthorne and this property is. That's owned by the property owner that actually surrounds this property. It kind of goes off the map, but that is West Hawthorne Drive. That's a gravel road that goes up the hill. And then that's kind of what makes that the curve on the east boundary of this property is that road. It's just an easement. So this property only has an easement access across this neighboring parcel.
Okay.
Is that also the route that B2H had proposed to manage their behemoths?
It was one of their routes for, getting up on the hill for service.
Okay.
Yowza.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not a big road.
No.
No. And it's not paved either, if I got it correctly. So
That's
Correct.
correct.
right. Anything else for Mike? I'll entertain a motion then.
I move that the proposed resolution annexing property located at 109 Hawthorne Drive be read by title only, put to a vote, and passed.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Gary, second that. Additional comments, discussion? Can I have a reading of the proposed resolution by title only, please?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, declaring certain territory annexed to the City of LaGrande, Union County, Oregon, specifically properties at 109 Hawthorne Drive, Township 3 South, Range 38 East, Section 07DB, Tax Lot 5700.
All right, so we've got a motion, a second, and a reading of the resolution by title. All those, let me have a roll call vote, please.
Steve Clemens,
Yes?
Gary Lillard,
Yes.
Corinne Dudo,
Yes.
Nicole Howard,
Yes.
Marianne Meisner is absent excused, Justin Rock,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, very good. Moving on to the last elements of the meeting, shuffling things around here real quick. We see a number of staff here. Any staff wish to make comments at all?
I do.
Go ahead. Who wants to go? Mike?
Yep.
Okay, go first, then Stu.
Okay, I just wanted to give you an update. You'll see it in your monthly report when you get it, but we were successful at getting awarded another project fund for our housing production strategy, which is the next phase of our needs analysis. You'll be seeing the needs analysis stuff here in a couple months for public hearings, but we have a consultant on board. We're working through the contracts of the scope of work, and hopefully you'll be introduced to them in some form. Hopefully by September. I'm hoping they'll be starting October at the latest. But anyway, we're actively doing that, and we should have that completed by next June is our target date. So anyway, that's it.
Thanks, Mike. Stu?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mayor. A couple of things. One, I think you sent an email asking about Kids Club and the city's taking over the after school program. So just thought everybody would be interested. Of course, that's a moving target with COVID. We are working with Grande Academy. The food bank, if you knew where that was, right across from my office, moved to the church over by Walmart. So they vacated a room that is perfect for an after school program. It's great because it's right across from my office where Michaela is. She'll be administering the program. So we'll have easy access to the park, to the gymnasium inside their school building, and our offices for extra help if we need to. So I'm excited for that. Negotiations are ongoing. We're getting close. We're trying to figure out, we're going to meet this week and see if we can figure out if we're going to have some supplemental childcare, if there's a need for that, or not, with online school or after school or whatever that looks like. So we're working on that. That's an update. And then the second one, we closed out our concession grant with Oregon State Parks, so that just got the check for, I don't know the exact amount, over $53,000 for the remainder of that project, which was a total of about $95,000, $98,000 in grant funding, plus so much local support and match dollars that state parks actually questioned if we really had that much community involvement. So it's just a testament to basically 3 retired guys that put in hundreds of hours working on that project. Bud Hill, who's a city employee, recruited other electricians to help out, and just, I mean, cash from people and time, discounts from businesses and plumbers, and just everybody. I just love our community for that reason. So many people want to help. So really cool project, totally done and closed out. Steve's muted again.
Sorry, Stu. What was that project? Repeat that one, Rule.
So that is the concession building at Pioneer Park.
Okay.
And it also included ADA access pathway that's paved for wheelchair access and new bleachers. So really cool.
Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Anybody else? Any other staff comments? All right, city manager Oh, wait a second. Chief, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, councilors. I just have some good news I'd like to share with you guys. Our newest police officer graduated from the police academy last Thursday, and he is that completes about 8 months of training for him, both in-house and in Salem at the police academy. He came back, and tonight is his actual first night on the job, covering a shift solo by himself. So it's a good thing. And I guess I misspoke because he's not our newest police officer. Some of you may have met Cody Kirby. He has been serving as our code enforcement officer since last fall. And Cody is now, hello, Marianne.
Hello. I thought the meeting was on Wednesday. I just spaced it. It's always on Wednesday. What are we doing on Monday?
Yep. We were all there, Marianne. Believe me.
Oh, so other people were late too?
No, but some of us were a little confused, me included. So
Well, I was outside. I didn't pay any attention. Well, I had my a cataract removed today.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't have anything to do with it though. I'm here now. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, so I was just going to close with Cody Kirby was our code enforcement officer. He has been hired as our newest police officer. And so Cody is in training right now, and we're searching for a code enforcement officer. Just wanted to give you guys a staff update on what's going on.
Okay. Before you go blank and mute again, Chief, I want to thank you for your community comment the other day. It was very enlightening. It put things quite well into perspective in terms of what our police officers do, and 11 out of 39 plus thousand is a commendable record in my mind. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and I was glad to do it. And our city manager helped with that as well. And I think that I appreciate the Observer for printing that. I think it was well received by the community.
Good. Thank you. Kyle, I saw you pop up, so I'm assuming you want to have comments. I want to know about all these roads getting paved in my neighborhood, and that's good.
It's coming. It's coming. Well, first, I need to apologize for all the noise we had coming in there. As you can see, I'm on site, so we had a lot of craziness going on as we logged in there. I also have a few things, kind of like Stu. You know, we are continuing with the paving. We did finish all the CMAQ roads except for North 4th Street, which will start this week. So there'll probably be about 2 or 3 days of paving on North 4th Street. We have another project opening at the treatment plant where we're doing the dredging in the pre-air. Not that exciting. I will not be bringing in examples of the project or pictures because most people don't want to see that. The last thing is we're about to kick off our major meter replacement throughout town. So the crews will be replacing about 3,200 water meters in the next few months. We just finished working with finance on getting the billing technical piece worked out today. So we should be kicking off having crews running through the city, jumping in, turning people's water off. So I'm guessing you guys may get some phone calls or questions on what's going on. All the meters in town will be replaced. We will change the reading levels from 100 cubic feet down to 1 cubic foot. So what does that mean is on the part of our state work with conservation, we will now be able to tell when a leak kicks off. We'll be able to contact the person before we run billing at the end of the month. We should be able to let them know the next day, if not within 2 days, that they have a leak or there's been some sort of event with large water consumption. So that's pretty exciting.
Okay, good, good. Thank you.
Yep.
I do like seeing all the roads getting redone, resurfaced. Makes a difference in a neighborhood. Even if some of the roads are not high traffic roads. Like L was really nice, and I think Lake. And now I see North Fourth has also been paved.
Yeah,
nice. Appreciate it.
Yes. The only bad part is while we're paving roads, we can't maintain roads. So
yeah, I know.
We will be out potholing and patching up ditches here in the next 2 weeks as well. So
okay, very good.
Love
Anybody
those
else?
Trains.
Where is that?
The trains. Where are you?
Oh, I'm in Baker. This is what it's like to not have a quiet zone.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I really appreciate the new water meters, the conservation piece of that, and the amount that it could save our citizens is great.
Yes.
And are these the new ones? I know a little bit about them because my son's changing them out, but he said that you'll be able to read their meters from afar. You won't have to have someone in a truck drive up and check the meter.
Yeah, we currently have that functionality. We do have some towers set up. There's 2 towers within town, so we can remotely read all the meters. The problem is just with 100 cubic feet, you can't get real accurate. It clicks over maybe once a day, once every 3 days for low water users. So if something were to happen, like a toilet leak, we wouldn't know for probably 30 days.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Anybody, any other questions for Kyle? Any of the staff comments?
Just to let Nicole know, we will not be chip sealing any more roads this year.
Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
Yeah, nice. City manager comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I really don't have anything other than just to make sure that the council's aware that currently the staff is providing the input to the mayor pro tem on my annual evaluation. So you'll be getting something as soon as he gets that in and compiled. So just wanted to bring that up. But other than that, I didn't have anything else to share at this time.
Okay, thank you. As soon as I get the input from Gary, I'll be sending out packets to you all for your comments on the city manager's evaluations. So look for that here probably, I don't know, maybe sometime this weekend coming. So, council comments. Start with you, Mr. Lillard. For me, you're in the upper left.
Mic open there. Yeah, I do have a couple of things quickly here. I attended a virtual meeting of the Community Connection Senior Council last Wednesday. They had a couple of pieces of information that I think are potentially useful for citizens. They have gotten money through a grant for utility assistance. Normally that's all wiped out and gone after the winter months, but with this grant, which I presume had something to do with the pandemic, they do have money available for electric, gas, water, sewer assistance. And this is available for anybody. It's not limited to just seniors. So I told them I'd help kind of get that word out so that citizens are aware of it if they need that kind of assistance. The other thing that was quite interesting is that they've also received a pretty large grant that would allow them to provide purchase assistance to military veterans for buying a house. At the time of the meeting last week, they still had 9 slots available. It would be a $15,000 loan, but the loan can be forgiven at the rate of 20% a year for 5 years.
Wow.
And yeah, it sounds like a pretty cool thing. There are some conditions that have to be met. It has to be lender approved. I think there's a certain credit score that has to be attained. So if people are interested to get further information, they need to contact Debbie or Susie out there at Community Connections. And their number is 963, hang on, 963-3186.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.
So that's what I have.
Very good. Anything else?
Not for me.
Nope. Justin. Kareen.
I had a couple things. One for you, Gary. How are we doing on the partnership with students in the city council?
You know, interesting you asked that, because I just sent an email to our partner over there in Nampa last week. I have not heard back from her. I think she's been doing a lot of work at home. I'd probably have to contact them to be sure I get a message directly to her, but I did send an email to her city email address just to let her know that we haven't forgotten. Just a lot of other stuff going on, obviously, but wanted to keep the channels open. So hopefully she has gotten that or will get it soon.
There's no reason that we couldn't start something up like this and have the students join us on Zoom.
No, not that I can see.
I know of a young lady that's very interested and would be great at it. So when that comes up, I need to let her know the information.
I'll be a little more proactive about getting in touch then and seeing if I can track her down.
Okay. I had another question for you, Robert. Is there, I know we're not thinking about a warming shelter because it's so ridiculously hot, but what's going on with the warming shelter for this winter?
I don't have a current update for you. I can get one and email it out to the council.
Okay. Just looking ahead so it's not just last minute, oh gosh, all of a sudden it's 20 degrees and we don't have anything set up. So, and then is Councillor Whitbeck's position on the November ballot?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
Yes. But we do not know yet who the people are whose names will be listed for that position.
Okay, so there have been some applications with signatures and whatnot.
Yeah, the deadline was on Thursday of last week at 1 o'clock to get me their petitions. I received 3 of them. I will probably be able to announce the 3 tomorrow.
Okay, that's amazing, because a few years ago, there's only one position that had anyone opposing. So I think it's nice to see that people are stepping up.
Yes, exactly. Nicole, comments? Marianne, comments?
Just that I'm sorry.
No.
I missed the meeting. I have questions, but I will just call Robert tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I had several questions that I had when I was preparing for the council meeting on Wednesday night in my mind. Somehow I didn't even go on the city's site today, so that's probably my fault for not checking that today. Otherwise I would have seen it.
Truth be told, Marianne, I was under the assumption that we were Wednesday night as well. And I only found out we were tonight when I emailed Kayla about the work session that I thought was tonight.
Okay.
And so this is a change up that everybody, I hope, hope we don't have too many of these change ups. So
Yeah, I hope so
Just-
too.
Just as a reminder, the reason that we had to reschedule for today was because of the deadlines to get the marijuana petition on the November ballot.
right.
So what, may I ask what the vote was on that issue? Or did we pull it?
They didn't submit a petition, so we pulled the text.
Good, because that was
Yeah,
one of
Mary,
the, I had
yeah,
been
Marianne,
talking to a lot of
I'll give you a
people.
call tomorrow.
Okay, I will give you a call because I have several questions, but I will give you a call tomorrow.
Sounds good.
The only comment, well, I have a couple of things. The first one is to say that Gary and Robert and I met today virtually to review the council rule of conduct or that we've been working on. We're pretty close to having that put together, and we'll be sharing that with the rest of the council in a work session. And then after the council has approved the language, it'll move to formal council action at some point, probably as a resolution. So it looks good. It's I think something that's it's due to be revised, and it should be looked at every so often. The last thing I want to do before we draw this out too long is just to say I'm constantly impressed by what our city is doing and what our programs are doing in this time of pandemic. The stuff at the library is pretty amazing. They have a new recording system that they can record any length of story, and it can then be listened to as many times as people want. Plus, moving the new collection out to the street on Saturdays is a pretty cool idea, and it gives people an opportunity to see what's out there to read and borrow. And with that, I will.
Steve,
yes, ma'am.
I ask one more thing? And that was going back to Corinne's comment about the warming station. I've had many people ask me who they could donate things to for the warming station. So, Robert, when you find out when it might open, can you find out who to contact and their number?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good question, Marion. So this concludes the open session of the City Council regular session for August. And at this point, I'm going to we're going to take 2 minutes to kind of cut things off and let people check out, and then we will adjourn to the executive session. So I'm going to go mute for a bit and then let people sign out. And once we're all, looks like people are going left and right.